Where is Sebastian Rogers? Hey there, I'm Bob with Brothers in Crime, and that is the question of the day. Sebastian is 15 years old. He's 120 pounds, 5'5", brown hair, brown eyes. Sebastian has been missing from his home in Hendersonville, Tennessee since February 26th of 2024. This is 48 days at this point. He could literally be anywhere. So just because you're not close to Hendersonville, Tennessee, does not mean he's not near you. Take a look at this face, and I used a picture where he isn't smiling. Most of the pictures we see, he has a gigantic smile on his face, a smile that I can imagine would only make anyone who saw him smile in return. But I wanted to use one that isn't being used all the time everywhere, because if you see Sebastian, he may not be smiling. May or may not. We hope he is. Sebastian's on the autism spectrum. He does talk, he is verbal, and he is very smart. His favorite color is green. He loves the game Uno. He likes to play Minecraft. He loves animals, particularly cats. He enjoys fishing and swimming, and he has a sense of humor. He does not have social media. He does not have internet access on his phone, but he does watch Minecraft videos on YouTube on his phone. Now, both of those things have been said by his father, Seth. And before you get excited that, well, that's a contradiction, that's an inconsistency, I'm sure there's a reason for that. Perhaps it means that he has Wi-Fi access in the home, but he doesn't have data on his cell phone. I don't really know what it means. We do know that he watches YouTube videos. Otherwise, it doesn't sound like he's on the fake book or the Gramster or any of those other things. Sebastian lived at 1008 Stafford Court in Hendersonville, Tennessee with his mother, Katie, and his stepfather, Chris. He spends every other weekend and school breaks with his father, Seth. Seth was at work as a corrections officer the night of the disappearance until 7:20 a.m. on February 26th. Seth last spoke with Sebastian on Thursday prior to his disappearance. Chris, the stepfather, was at work in Memphis, Tennessee on the St. Jude construction project. While he's at work, he stays in an RV trailer in an RV park, which is about 3 hours and 37 minutes away, door to door, according to Chris. And Chris, the stepfather, says he had not been in the home since early February. Apparently, he was gone pretty much the whole month of February off at the construction site. Katie drives a 2017 Infiniti SUV. It was in the garage the night of the disappearance. Chris drives a late model Chevrolet truck. It was, according to Chris, on location at the job site in Memphis the night of Sebastian's disappearance. Now, a work van belonging to Katie's employer was parked at the back of the driveway. Other vehicles could get in and out of the driveway. It wasn't blocking things, but it was there. The garage door of the home requires a code or a clicker to open, but the man doors are accessible by just using a code. And we do understand that Sebastian was aware of that code and knew how to use it. Katie and Chris, that's mom and stepdad, they do not have, or did not have, at least at the time Sebastian disappeared, did not have a home security system, no cameras or anything like that. Sebastian attended Beach High School. He rode the bus to school, and he was there on Friday, and he was expected to go on Monday. February 25th was a Sunday, and then February 26th is the Monday. Let's start with Sebastian and Katie's day on Sunday. According to Katie, they had breakfast at home. They went and picked up Katie's niece, which would be Sebastian's cousin. They went to BJ's, did some shopping, came home, put away the groceries. Then they went bowling. After bowling, they had dinner at Texas Roadhouse, and the last people other than Katie to see Sebastian were two of his aunts and his cousin at the dinner at Texas Roadhouse. And Seth, Sebastian's father, has said that he has seen video of Sebastian at the Texas Roadhouse after dinner that night. Sebastian and Katie then returned home. Sebastian took out the trash. Seth, the father, was shown a video of Sebastian taking out the trash, but he said in that video it was very dark and all he could really see was shadows, so he couldn't say for sure that it was Sebastian that was depicted in that video. Sebastian went to bed around 9 p.m., according to his mom, Katie. He wasn't angry or upset. She said they had a good day. There were no problems. When he went to bed, he was wearing black sweatpants that had a white stripe and a long sleeve black shirt that had some type of graphic print on the front. Katie has not been able to locate these clothes since. At around 10 p.m., there was a noise from Sebastian's room. And one interview, Katie described that as a thud, where she asked him if he fell out of bed. He said no. And she said, okay, whatever you're doing in there, you need to go to sleep. And he said, okay. Now, there's been much ado about the fact that a mother heard a thud and didn't go rushing in the room to investigate. All I can speak from is personal experiences, and there have been noises that come from my kids' rooms that don't raise alarm or panic in me, especially when they're playing video games or playing other things in their room that tend to get loud or rambunctious. I can't say just because it's a thud that's something I would get excited about. As a parent, you tend to have a sense for what noises are normal and what noises are not. Katie says she was reading a chapter for school and talking to Chris on the phone that evening when Sebastian was in bed. There were solar garden lights on, the little solar lights that you pop in the flower beds and whatnot, and two lights above the garage doors that are always on, but no other exterior lights, no motion sensor lights. By all accounts, it sounds like this neighborhood, there are no street lights, there are no sidewalks. It sounds like it's pretty dark in this neighborhood at night. Around midnight, Katie said she went to bed. When interviewed by Nancy Grace, Nancy asked her if she's a heavy sleeper, and she said off and on. Katie denies that she took any medications to help her sleeping that night, and she says that she did not hear anything overnight. Now, at 3:10 a.m., approximately, and all these times are approximate, but around 3:10, home security video from Sebastian's neighborhood shows two points of light, thought by some to be flashlights, in a common area behind Sebastian's home. This video shows these two little dots of light. It looks like this video was played on some type of device and then recorded by a cell phone, watching the video being played on another device, and all we have is one section of the video. So it's a very tiny little segment. It's super enlarged. Everything's very fuzzy. Those things, those little light orbs to me don't look any different than when my cameras are on and a bug flies a certain way and the light reflects. So I don't see anything in there. Seth, Sebastian's father, has seen that video, and I believe he's seen more of the video than what's been released to the public. His belief is that when you see the whole video, it appears to be obvious that this is part of a trash truck. Now, at 6 a.m., when Katie goes to wake Sebastian up for school, he's not in his room. Initially, she thinks, is he in the kitchen? Did he go get breakfast? Is he playing a prank and hiding behind a door and going to pop out? And it doesn't take long before she figures out that is not the case. The first thought I imagine of any parent when your kid's not where they're supposed to be is you start running through, where else could they be? What are the possibilities here? Well, he has no history of running away. He's not a runner. We've heard that from both parents. None of Sebastian's shoes are missing. So if he's left the house, presumably he's barefoot. Sebastian's shoes are kept by the front door. They're not kept in his room. And he had some old tennis shoes, some new tennis shoes, and some boots, and they were all right there by the front door. When Sebastian's father was asked about him potentially going out barefoot, he relayed a story that Sebastian, when he was younger, had stepped on a mound of fire ants barefoot, and that didn't go so well, as you would imagine. And so he tends to be pretty conscious about having his socks and shoes on when he goes outside. Don't blame him. That sounds horrible. One thing was missing, which was a keychain flashlight that Sebastian had. Katie's car was in the garage in the same location where it had been the night before, so it wasn't like he had hopped in the car and took off or anything. Katie calls Chris, and she begins driving to look for Sebastian as well. Now, around 6:20, Chris calls the sheriff's office. He said that they live outside the city limits, so 911 calls go to a hub that determines location, and the caller is then transferred to the appropriate location. So he called the sheriff's office directly to avoid all that. If he's in Memphis, 3.5 hours away, if he were to call 911 from his cell phone, it wouldn't have gone anywhere near Hendersonville or Nashville anyway. It would have gone to the local 911 center. So that wouldn't have worked. I have no information about this deal where calling 911 around Hendersonville gets you into this hub or whatever he called it. I don't know. Can't say it is, can't say it isn't. Apparently, one of the reasons why he called 911 rather than Sebastian's mother, Katie, is because she was just hysterical at this point. And you'll notice some things as I'm reading through this little timeline here, some things are duplicated, and that's because information came from different sources. What I've tried to do here is assemble things that are either in videotaped interviews where the mother or father or stepfather, somebody said it and we can go back and see them say it, instead of having uh, third and fourth hand hearsay kind of stuff of, well, I saw somewhere on Facebook that somebody said they had heard that somebody said that so and so's cousins, uncles, plumbers, mechanic thought. That's the game of telephone, and not real reliable. I'm not saying that what any of these people are saying is true or not. I don't know any of them from a can of paint, but I did want to the extent possible, put this information in a way that could be attributed to someone. Where did you hear that, or where did you find that? And I've lined up those videos along the side. And you can go to our website, brothersincrimepodcast.com, if you want to see this. And any of the videos that I have on the side that are linked as sources, you can just click on them from the website and watch them. If you're looking at something and say, well, I don't remember the mom saying this, or the dad or the stepdad or whatever, just find the video that is referenced and you can watch it. At this point, law enforcement responds, the search begins, efforts increase throughout the day, but from what I can tell of the radio traffic, they were on it pretty much from the get-go. There were over 200 searchers, K9 mounted units, helicopter, drone, the Sumner County Sheriff's Office, Bureau of Investigation, Tennessee Highway Patrol, Shackle Island Fire, and other agencies. I'm sorry if I'm leaving anybody out. Speaking of the radio traffic, this video link down here via Jessica Danielle timeline. I don't know this person, but this video, they did an excellent job of taking the police radio traffic and then lining it up with the timeline, putting some photographs with it, putting times on everything. That can be a real pain when you're looking at when you're listening to audio and trying to line it up. And Jessica Danielle did a fantastic job. If you've not listened to that audio yet and you're interested in this case, the Sebastian Rogers missing case, I would highly recommend that you go look at that. It may fill in quite a few gaps for you in these questions of, well, was there a hit or was there wasn't? Yeah, was there wasn't? Was there a hit with the dog search or not? And what was done? And for the folks that say, oh, the police did nothing, go listen to that. I think that'll be very informative for you. Chris at one point made the statement that I can promise you every single parent has been vetted, and I can't go into details, but I can tell you we have been vetted and we have been cleared of all possibility of wrongdoing, foul play. There's nothing to that. It is what it is. I think we all understand that when there's a child missing, although it's complicated, because if it's not a criminal investigation because there's no evidence that a crime has been committed. So there can't truly be any suspects if there's no crime has taken place. But normally, if there's something afoul afoot, no one's cleared until the actual person that committed the crime has been charged. Now, Seth is working at a corrections facility in Davidson County, and when he gets off work, he notices he has a missed call and a text message from Chris. So he calls Chris, and this is about 7:20 in the morning, Seth said, when he got out of the jail there. And he calls, and that's when he's notified that Sebastian is missing. And of course, he heads over to Chris and Katie's home. Law enforcement contacts the neighbors, asks them to view their home security footage, look for things and share anything that might reveal anybody moving throughout the night. You can hear all that in this radio traffic. They go through and call out the houses that they've been to by address that they do or don't have cameras, and we've asked for it, or nobody's home. And someone you can hear is maintaining a list at that point of which houses have been asked so that they know which ones are left that need to be recontacted. By 11:17, an endangered child alert is issued by TBI in conjunction with the Sumner County Sheriff's Office. It's 11:17 on the 26th. Now, they're still searching throughout the day. This up here where I said the search began, it began early in the morning, but it increased throughout the day and night. On February 27th, the Amber Alert was issued based on additional investigative information developed during the search. And searchers have covered about 2,000 miles on foot. Now, that source is from the TBI newsroom, which is another outstanding source for actual information directly from the TBI. So I encourage you to check that out as well. There's a link to it. We'll get to that a little later. This is what the Amber Alert looked like. Here's one of those pictures where this guy is just smiling. And I mean, my gosh, his smile. Just a great big old happy smile. 1-800 TBI fine. You can contact that number if you know anything. If you want to call the sheriff's office, you can also call this number. Some interesting statistics to think about here. And this is from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In 2021, 286 children on the autism spectrum were reported missing and exploited children. 67% were recovered within 1 week. Now, we're well beyond 6 weeks here, and still we have no idea where Sebastian is. So beyond the 1 week mark, he was already not part of the majority that have been recovered within that first week. Looking over the 10 years, they have a 98% recovery rate for missing children on the autism spectrum when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is engaged. Also, when it comes to folks that are on, or children specifically, on the autism spectrum, of all accidental deaths that occurred when the children were missing, 84% of those were drownings. So, that's a reason that water is searched very often in these cases, is because it is probably the most likely threat to missing children, especially those on the autism spectrum. On March 2nd, some anonymous Nashville businesses pledged a cash reward for information related to the search. It sounds like, especially in the early several weeks, the community, the businesses, the citizens, neighbors were rallied strong around finding Sebastian, and I hope that remains the same. On March 7th, something happened that was a little bit unsettling, but absolutely necessary. The Sumner County Sheriff's Office, along with the Kentucky State Police, searched a landfill in Kentucky where trash collected from Sebastian's neighborhood is transported. And why would you do that when the assumption is that Sebastian, for whatever reason, walked out of the home on the night of February 25th or the morning of February 26th? Well, here's the thing. Landfills tend to be a constantly changing environment. Fortunately, the technology is such that you can tell trash taken from one neighborhood, usually, especially early on. The folks that operate those landfills can pinpoint a general area where that was taken. But the longer it sits there and the more it gets run over and compacted and stuff stacked on top of it or dumped on top of it, it gets a little harder to find. And so it makes sense to me that even with no evidence of foul play and no reason to believe there was a problem, it makes sense to me to do this search as a precaution. Because how many times have we seen searches of landfills become necessary, and sometimes it's too late or things are too difficult to find. So I think they were on the ball here by preemptively conducting that search. And hats off to them, because landfills are dangerous and horribly disgusting. For all these folks to be spending their day out there in this, good for them. No evidence was found related to Sebastian's disappearance in that landfill search, which is good. Now, on March 15th, TBI put out a few statements. One said that agents, detectives, and intelligence analysts continue to work around the clock to review every bit of information available. Sebastian's family has remained cooperative since the search began and have done whatever law enforcement has asked of them. TBI also said there are few clues to indicate what happened to Sebastian or where he may be. There is not proof at this time that there is any criminal element involved in his disappearance, but also there's not any proof that there is not a criminal element involved. That's an appropriate way to say we have nothing. We have nothing that says that something bad happened here, but we have no proof that nothing bad didn't happen. This image is from a pond that they drained early on. By March 20th, we heard from Seth, Sebastian's father, that he had been searching for Sebastian, handing out and posting flyers and organizing volunteer searchers every day. Although that is a statement that Seth made, there are numerous videos, numerous YouTubers, podcasters, TikTokers, local news channels that were out there on various different days that saw Seth searching, went with him while he searched, or interviewed him while he was mid search, going to search, or coming back from searching. So it seems pretty well confirmed that Seth was out there searching pretty much nonstop. By March 22nd, the TBI announced that they had more than 240 tips that have come in through the email tips to TBI at tbi.tn.gov and phone via 1-800-TBI-FIND. 240 tips. Now, on March 25th, Nancy Grace interviewed Katie and Chris, the mother and stepfather of Sebastian. She brought up the video alleged to be flashlights in the common area of their neighborhood. Nancy asserted that those lights seen in that video were now not believed to be flashlights, and asked Katie and Chris if that was correct, and they advised that that was very correct, confirming that those lights were not flashlights. Something else that was brought up in that interview is that Chris and Katie had left the home that Sebastian had disappeared from. Chris said that he left to return to work. Katie said that she left to accompany her husband, and then she would be returning to the home, but didn't know when she would be back. Later in that same interview, Chris said that they are not disclosing their location because of safety reasons, citing YouTubers and Facebookers out there that have sent some very heinous, threatening information and things of that nature. Nancy then asked Katie if that was one of the reasons she left the home, and Katie said yes, it was one of them. When asked if she was concerned about being away from the home while the search was going on, Katie said, absolutely, I am. And when asked why she left, given that concern, she stated that Sebastian could be anywhere and we're looking for him anywhere and everywhere. Now, that raised some eyebrows. Leaving the home where the child disappeared from, previous interviews, I believe they had said, they were just wanting him to walk back through the door. And that raises the obvious question of, well, he's coming home and there's no one there. There's two ways to look at this. One, and it reminds me a lot of Scott Peterson, the way he behaved and the things he said and did after his wife and unborn child disappeared on Christmas Eve. There were a lot of eyebrows raised, and the public felt that based on his behavior alone, he was up to no good. Of course, he ended up being convicted of those crimes. Now, on the other hand, there have certainly been cases where parents or individuals, family members, acquaintances, whatnot, have said or done things after an incident and they just look guilty to the world, but it turns out they had absolutely no involvement. And this is why you hear it said all the time, everybody reacts differently. There's no instruction manual for how you are supposed to react and what you're supposed to do and not do when something bad happens. There had been some speculation about furniture, that there had been entire rooms worth of furniture had been replaced or something to that nature. So Nancy asked about that, and Chris said that no, furniture has not been replaced in the home. Nothing has been removed. There is a mattress in the garage that had been given to him, but it wasn't as though all the furnishings had been stripped out of a room and replaced with new. Again, in this interview, Chris says that law enforcement told them there's no foul play, no nefarious issues. We have been cleared of all wrongdoing. Again, though, at this point, law enforcement is clearly saying to the public, there's no evidence that there was wrongdoing, but there's no evidence that there wasn't. So Chris saying they're cleared seems to get some people up in arms, and I get that. But on the other hand, at this point, there's no known crime, no evidence that any crime committed. So there's not even a place necessarily where you have suspects that need to be cleared. Suspected of what? Because you have no evidence that there is a what. Look at these pictures as we're going by, this happy fella. Look at these smiles, great big smiles. If you know anything, if you've seen anything, 1-800-TBI-FIND, please. On March 29th, the United Cajun Navy suspended their search efforts due to their volunteers receiving threats, including death threats. Seth has also said that he and his volunteers have been harassed, followed, intimidated, told to stop searching, and flyers that he and his volunteers have posted have been torn down. Now, if this is happening, and I don't know, I'm not there, but if any of this stuff is happening, that's just awful, and I don't understand it. I certainly don't understand why people would be getting death threats about searching. If there are a number of outsiders descending on this community, Facebookers, TikTokers, YouTubers, whatnot, poking around, I can see that perhaps the folks that live there might not be happy about that. Maybe they're keeping an eye on these strangers. Maybe they're thinking these folks that they don't know, they want to make sure that they're only there for good intentions. Flyers being torn down, I could see that someone may take down a flyer that's been posted somewhere they don't want it. Different jurisdictions have different rules on that you can't, tack a sign to a telephone pole or whatever. I have no idea if that's the case there. But if someone is actually maliciously pulling down flyers about this missing kid for no good reason, or to interfere with the search, or somehow stop him from being found, everyone would agree that that's just awful. Unless there's some explanation that I can't think of. And Seth obviously doesn't see an explanation about it either. Somewhere in this time, there were some glasses found, and I believe those were near Gallatin, Tennessee. They were found by searchers, volunteer searchers that were working with Seth, and he said, I can't say those are not Sebastian's. There's nothing about them that tells me they're not. They could be. I don't know. So he had those collected, turned over to authorities, and by April 1st, the Sumner County Sheriff's Office announced that they were investigating whether they were Sebastian's or not. By April 1st here, law enforcement has received 314 tips related to the search for Sebastian. April 2nd, Sumner County Sheriff's Office said, we have not cleared anyone, but we have no evidence to support foul play. And that is Eric Craddock, the chief deputy, who seems to be the spokesperson. I don't know if he's leading the search, but definitely appears to be the spokesperson for the Sumner County Sheriff's Office. And so again, we've not cleared anyone, but we have no evidence to support there's foul play. The Sumner County Sheriff's Office also announced on April 2nd that video depicting the lights, allegedly two flashlights, has no evidentiary value at this time. Could it have evidentiary value later? Well, there's a whole host of possibilities why that could be true. Right now, it's a puzzle piece that they're not sure if it even fits in the puzzle they're working on yet. So as the puzzle starts to come together, that might be a piece that clears in the picture. But it also may be completely unrelated. On April 3rd, the TBI and the Sumner County Sheriff's Office are conducting another thorough search in the Long Hollow Pike area. This is sort of the main road that the subdivision where Chris and Katie and Sebastian live is off of. They announced that the glasses found by the volunteer searcher are not related to Sebastian Rogers. On April 6th, there was a prayer vigil held for Sebastian. It was attended by Seth and Seth's parents, who came from Texas. It did not appear that Chris and Katie were in attendance. Again, that's another one of those eyebrow-raising things, but it doesn't prove guilt. That alone would not get you anywhere in court. And for all we know, at this point, there are a lot of folks out in the world, maybe just internet warriors. I don't know if it's people in the community, but there are people that are obviously not happy with Chris and Katie and how they have appeared since the disappearance of Sebastian. So maybe there is a safety concern, and that's why they didn't attend. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody or anything here. I don't know what happened. I don't know who is or isn't involved, or where this fella is. That's the most important thing. Where is he? The point I'm trying to make with all these is that there are multiple sides to every story. Things are not always as they seem. This picture is Sebastian at school, and I mean, just look at that big, bright smile. He can't even keep his eyes open. He's got that smile going so big. If you're not into calling and you know something, tips to TBI at tbi.tn.gov. You can send your tips through there. Now listen, it does not help to say, I heard on Facebook, or my neighbors, friends, cousins, plumbers, doctors said. That's not really helpful. If you've seen something, certainly if you have seen Sebastian or you think you've seen Sebastian, by all means, that's a tip worthy of passing on. If you have information that is fairly direct, that you feel very confident about, that would be worth sharing. But things you've seen on social media, things you've seen even in videos, in my video, don't come in and tell them, well, that Brothers in Crime said, no, 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 no. They need tips that are firsthand or at least close enough that they can track down pretty simply. So, I'm going to talk about the physical searches a little bit. There's been much talk about not searching, where they're searching, all those kinds of things. What I've found in just looking at the interviews, looking at what TBI has put out, according to Katie and Chris, law enforcement has searched their home multiple times, and Chris and Katie have given full consent and cooperation every time. Katie's car has been searched multiple times by law enforcement, and scent dogs have checked the car. Nancy Grace asked that question, and Katie said yes, they have. Sebastian's residence, the yard, the house, the vehicles have all been searched multiple times. That's what TBI put out in their updates there. So that sort of matches up with what Chris and Katie are saying. Now, Chris did say that at least 3 dogs have hit on the retention pond. The pond has been drained, nothing there. And I believe we saw news reports of that pond being drained, either drone or helicopter footage. Chris also says that the dogs also hit around the outside of the house, and then only the scent dogs have hit. Cadaver dogs, which have been involved in these searches as well, have not made any hits. Now, that's according to Chris, the stepfather. According to the TBI newsroom, neighbors' houses have been searched, pools in the neighborhood were searched, dive teams were brought in, bodies of water around the neighborhood and beyond that area were searched, including caves. And Danielle, that I spoke about up here earlier, let's go find that. Where'd she go? Here we is. Jessica Danielle timeline. If you listen to that, you will even hear one of the officers talking about going into the cave. Now, in one of the interviews with Chris and Katie, they were asked about their involvement in looking for Sebastian, the search and whatnot. And at that point, Katie had said that she had reached out to Truckers Against Trafficking. And Chris said something along the lines of, being in the biker world, we utilize our brothers and sisters to help spread the word. I think that's great, spreading the word amongst any and all communities that you possibly can. When Chris and Katie were not actively involved in the search, and when they took the camper and headed in the Memphis direction, my thought was, well, maybe the reason she is not out there physically searching the local area is because she's perhaps she's using technology. Maybe she's back home emailing that flyer to every hospital in America, communicating that way and spreading the word and getting his picture out online or something like that. And that would be a pretty productive use of time. You can certainly hit a lot of places that way. We didn't hear about that though. This is all we heard about. I hear lots of people lament that the devices, the vehicles, and the phones need to be checked and searched and downloaded. And I agree. For everybody involved, they should be. Anybody that was connected to Sebastian at this point, let's do that. If for no other reason, rule out that we don't need to be looking at this person, or that isn't a possibility of what happened. Sebastian's phone has been thoroughly checked. That was according to Katie in one of the interviews. I believe I have heard from Seth that law enforcement still has his devices. Chris and Katie's phones, laptops, all devices have been searched by law enforcement. That was according to Chris and Katie in the Nancy Grace interview. And then TBI also put in one of their updates that many neighbors and businesses have provided video from home and business surveillance systems. It's been analyzed and enhanced where possible by tech experts with the TBI, FBI, and the Secret Service. Numerous search warrants have been executed, cell phone data has been analyzed, and any other available digital evidence has been collected, searched, and documented. Information was collected from Sebastian's gaming system. If I heard right, I think he has a Switch maybe, and has been analyzed. With help from the FBI, vehicles that were placed in the area at or around the time of Sebastian's disappearance have been accounted for. So, do we know absolute details? Do we have the demonstratives like we would see in a trial? No, we don't. But we do have here the TBI telling us we've done that. We've checked the devices, we've checked on the cars. I don't expect them to give us a full breakdown and come out here and publish every GPS location that Chris and Katie and everybody else's vehicles were at for the 48-hour period surrounding his disappearance. It's really not our business. I suppose we have to trust that they're telling us they've checked on the devices and they've done that the way it needed to be done. Let's talk about the polygraphs for a minute here. A week or so ago, the polygraphs were just all the talk about this situation. And remember, this situation is that Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers, this 15-year-old boy right here with this contagious smile, is missing. We don't know where he is. That's what this is all about. So let's keep that in mind. Everybody was up in arms about these polygraphs, and I can't figure out why. If you've listened to our podcast before, you know that I don't hold a lot of faith in polygraphs. It's not just because I don't like them. I don't have any reason to like or not like them. Science is not there to prove that they are effective as lie detectors. I mean, yeah, we call them a lie detector test, but the tests that have been done just don't prove that they're accurate. Now, sure, the associations and organizations that tend to represent polygraph examiners, they find studies and argue that they're somewhere between 97 and 99% accurate. But there are other studies and estimates by other organizations that say, no, it's much, much, much lower than that. And polygraphs are not admissible in court. You can't be compelled to take a polygraph. And even if you do, it can't be used in court. It's just not reliable. There have been cases, remember, Ted Bundy passed a polygraph. The Colonial Parkway murders case that we covered here in one of the earlier episodes on the Brothers in Crime podcast. Police had a good suspect. They had, the FBI's best polygraph examiner who took him in, questioned him, came back out and said, "This ain't your guy, move on." And everybody seemed to be happy with that. Now, someone in the investigation wanted to keep pushing, but they were told no, that, this guy says he didn't do it. On the polygraph, he didn't do it. Well, it was 30 some years later, after that suspect had passed away, that DNA proved that, in fact, he had been involved in several murders. He had killed several people. And there are certainly instances of polygraphs where people failed, yet they were completely innocent. And so I don't know why we're excited about why we need to get people on a polygraph. It's not that big of a deal. A polygraph can be used as an investigative tool for someone that's investigating and interrogating a potential suspect. It can be some leverage to maybe convince that suspect that you feel like you have proof that they're lying. And if that person puts more weight in the polygraph than I do, that might be troubling enough to them to have them start telling a different story than they told while they were hooked up to the toaster. In the disappearance of Sebastian, Katie says she has taken a polygraph and passed. Chris says that he offered to take a polygraph on many occasions, but because of his whereabouts, he was told by law enforcement that he did not need one. And when Nancy Grace asked if he's willing, he told her, "Name the place and time, ma'am, and I'll be there." Now, later, Nancy Grace reported that the folks that had set up the polygraph reported back to her that he had indicated that the TBI told him not to do that. Again, that starts to get a little third hand because it is Nancy Grace reporting what this middleman source said that Chris said. So I'm not saying any of those people are dishonest or that they've messed it up, but you don't want to hear something from me that Nancy said that this guy said that that guy said. Now, Seth said in his Nancy Grace interview that he has volunteered to take a polygraph, but was told by law enforcement it was not necessary. He apparently was told the same thing by law enforcement that Chris was when it came to the necessity for a polygraph. When made the same offer by Nancy Grace to take the polygraph, Seth said, "Sure, I'll do it." Seth says that he did take the polygraph as arranged by Nancy Grace, but that he fell asleep several times during that test. And anybody that's been watching this case and watching these interviews, it's pretty obvious that Seth has been dealing with some health issues throughout this entire ordeal and has at several times been sleep deprived and in pain. It seems like he is now getting some medical treatment for that. There are those that say, well, Seth's just saying he fell asleep so that he can, if he fails, he can say, well, it's because I fell asleep during the thing. I don't know. I don't know the guy from a can of paint, like I said. That'd be a pretty bizarre way to cover up what's it matter other than it can only make you look bad to the public. It seems like the way it works is if the world thinks you did something and you take a polygraph and you pass, they go, "Oh, you just figured out how to beat it." And if the world thinks you did something and you take a polygraph and you fail, the world goes, "See, you failed the polygraph." I think it's a matter of in our minds, we just use whatever we hear to confirm what we already think in a way. I don't know. The idea that he fell asleep intentionally on this polygraph or is saying that before the results come out, a little bit far fetched to me. That's just my opinion, though. I don't have a source for that because it came from right up in here. Now, some things have come out, and I don't know, are these really relevant or not? They could be, but maybe not. The first thing I want to say about any and all of this is that I don't think any of us that are walking this earth are perfect. And if any of us claim to have that leave it to beaver family home dynamic going on, well, God bless you. I don't know anybody that does. So if that's a thing, good. In my world, and I've been involved with a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances, and I've never found anybody that just has all perfect people in their life. At any rate, Nancy Grace, during the interview with Chris and Katie, asked Chris about an incident where he hit Sebastian with a belt. Chris said that Sebastian had lied about something. Chris gave him one swat with a belt on his buttocks. That was Chris's word, not mine, on the outside of his clothing. And Chris said it was years ago and that it was the one and only time he ever hit him with a belt. There's lots of speculation here, there, and everywhere about this belt incident, that nobody ever hit somebody one time with a belt, or, oh, there had to be more times, or there was a lot of corporal punishment. Can't tell you that Chris is telling the truth or not telling the truth. Again, don't know the guy from a can of paint. He could be a saint or not. I don't know. All we can know at this point is he said there was one incident. Also, and this gets a little bit dodgy, but documents related to Seth and Katie's divorce allege that Seth was abusive towards Sebastian. Those documents, I've seen those circulating around online, but they are not authenticated in my mind. I don't know that they're true and accurate copies or whatever. I have no idea. But that's out there. Now, it would not be the first time that allegations in divorce and custody documents were exaggerated, or one side saw something way differently than the other side did, and they decided to put it in writing as part of their divorce or custody case. Seth, in a very emotional interview on YouTube, alleged that Sebastian was SA'd when he was 7 or 8 years old by a 12 or 13-year-old that was staying in Chris and Katie's home. Assuming that's true, and I didn't put it in here, but there was a response posted by someone with Katie's name on Facebook, and I say a response, it appeared to be a response. It went into that person was not 13 years old, and Seth was involved in the therapy and so on and so forth, which seemed to confirm the incident happened. I don't know if that's really Katie's account that came from. I don't know that Katie wrote that. I don't have any idea. What I think you can take from this is that this guy, Sebastian, that makes him an even more vulnerable person. He's not had the perfect life. None of us have, but he's got this going on too. So it's all the more reason we need to find him. Where is he? Where is Sebastian Rogers? Again, 1-800-TBI-FIND, or email tips2tbi@tbi.tn.gov. If you have any clue where Sebastian might be, here's the number and the email address again, 1-800-TBI-FIND, or tips2tbi@tbi.tn.gov. And remember, at this point, he could be anywhere. So wherever you are, wherever you've been since February the 26th, if you've seen anything, say something. Call the number, 1-800-TBI-FIND. Thank you, and stay safe.